Right, so today I'm going to be showing you some sculpting techniques using cardboard. For starters, you'll want to have the following materials out. One, you'll want to have a cutting mat. It's really important whenever you're using a box cutter or X-Acto knife to cut on a mat because you will gash up any other surface. You will also want to have a box cutter and with a sharp blade. I will show you how to change that if you need to. This can be a useful tool, a bone folder. A bookmaking tool can be helpful for making creases and bending the cardboard. Rulers, depending on how big you're working, you have a 12-inch or 24-inch ruler. And it's actually called a square. This is going to be used for making right angles. Okay, it's actually a triangle shape, but yes, it's called a square. All right, so let's get started with the box cutter. It's going to be important to have a nice sharp blade. These particular box cutters, if you need to change the blade, if you notice it's not cutting the cardboard easily, the blade is probably dulled. They can dull relatively quickly, and it's surprising that cardboard can in fact dull the blade. To change the blade, all you need to do is twist off the bottom, the cap, and separate that like so. You can pull the blade out. You can check if the other side appears to be really sharp, like you see it looks like a perfect point, it's not rounded at all, you can just go ahead and flip the blade over. If the other side looks like it has already been used, then go ahead and bring the blade, bring the whole thing up to me, and I will give you a fresh blade. Okay. When you are cutting, a couple things. One, you just want to make sure with the cardboard we have sufficient cardboard, but not an excess. Please make sure to use the smallest piece that will suit your needs, and also don't cut out a little circle right in the middle of the shape. If you want to make a little circle, cut it out on the edge of the piece of cardboard. Okay. Safety tips. Very important. These will definitely do a number on a hand. So you need to make sure you are holding the cardboard firmly and you are never cutting towards your fingers. So I can cut kind of parallel to where my fingers are. If I were cutting let's say I was cutting a circle, actually, I'll just cut this down a little bit. What I'm going to do is when I'm standing, which I find to be helpful, it just kind of makes you more mobile. And I can put a little pressure on, but I'm actually turning my whole piece of cardboard so that the blade is never coming towards my fingers. Oops. And that should do that. It didn't cut all the way through, so if that's the case, it's fine. Just go around again. And there we go. So that was cut out, and notice that I never cut towards my fingers. Very, very important. All right, now for some sculpting techniques. If there's a lot of different ways to approach this, one thing you might want to do is to create some sort of skeleton that's going to go inside of your sculpture. Here's an example that, this could be some sort of an animal body inside of it. It could also be, say, a pineapple. If I wanted to create something like this, you can see it's made out of two parts that slide together. And to do that, I'll start with, I'm just going to take one of these. I'll just go ahead and trace it because I already have this shape. And I'm going to make the shape, and this could be done in any shape. But I'll just tracing that. Use my box cutter and cut that out. Here, and if you find that your cut does not go all the way through, the best bet is to just cut again. Don't try to force it or rip the cardboard in the process. Okay. So then, in order to get this piece to slide together with the other piece, what I'm going to do is I need to make a slit in this. But to determine how thick the slit will be, what I'm going to do is take a scrap of cardboard, like so, and I'm going to trace around the scrap of cardboard. This will show me how thick I need this slit to be. And I'm going to go about halfway down the shape. So you can see I have a little, if you can see that, there's lines here. And then I'm going to take my box cutter and I'm going to cut either just on the line or just inside of the line. I don't want to cut outside of the line because I want this to be nice and snug. Pull that out of there. And then this should fit snugly with this piece. So I have a little, my little skeleton. Okay. Let's say different ways to wrap something around that skeleton. I'll show you two different ideas. One is we can take, let's say I wanted something to go just directly around a strip of cardboard to go directly around it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to cut my strip, put this to the side for a moment, and then I'm going to take this strip and line it up on my cutting mat. I'm lining it up with the grid lines. And then I'm taking my box cutter and very gently, so I don't cut through all the way, I'm using the lines to kind of show me where to cut. And I'm doing what I call par cutting, which is cutting partially through it, not all the way through. So I'm cutting through that top layer of cardboard and potentially some of the corrugation. Keeping my fingers, always scooching the fingers away. Cut that off. And then so I end up at the piece that has all these little slits in it. And it is also very bendable. So if you try to just bend a piece of cardboard without doing this, you will not have much luck. Okay, but this should create something that is nice and flexible. And then I would then be able to attach it to my piece. And I could continue doing that and cover the whole piece like that if I wanted. Also, like let's say I did want to make this into a pineapple, you'd have to get a little more creative. Like how would I create that texture? So I made these little forms here, and I'll show you how I did that. So there's going to be some trial and error, particularly if you need to create some sort of a texture, something that's not smooth. You're going to have to do some experimenting. So the way I did that one was I started with a square of cardboard. Once again, using that idea of the par cutting, I cut an X in here. And I noticed with the X, the cardboard can bend this way and it can bend this way, but it can't bend both ways at the same time. So because it can't bend both ways at the same time, I couldn't get it kind of like pinched like this, which is what I wanted it to be, so it would have that sort of texture that a pineapple has. So I experimented with cutting off some of this top layer and exposing the corrugation to make it more bendable. So what I did, once again, I par cut that, and then I can pull off this layer of cardboard, exposing the corrugation, like so. So this becomes a little bit more bendable. And I also realized, though, it's still a little tricky to bend. I can kind of do it. But one way to do that a little bit neater is to take my bone folder and then I made a little crease everywhere I wanted it to bend. I wanted it to bend here, kind of halfway on each piece. And then pinch that, and we have a little pineapple piece, a little pineapple dimple, I guess. And then I could attach that here. I could just glue that. Hot glue will work. Probably quickest and easiest to do the hot glue. Okay. All right. So next up, you will sometimes, I have whole pages of these, or folder of these templates. So these templates can be really useful in figuring out how do I make a three-dimensional form. So this is one that would show you how to make a cube. You will notice on these that they have little tabs. With the cardboard, you do not need the tab because the thickness of the cardboard will give you sufficient place for attaching one side to the other side. So if you wanted to use this exactly with no changes to it, you don't want it big or anything, what you can do is you can shade the back of it with oil pastel. This is going to work better than pencil for transferring it onto the cardboard. And then I'm going to place it onto my cardboard and take a pencil and probably a ruler if you want to make sure to make this straight. And trace your lines. And because there is oil pastel on the back, you can see that that form is starting to show up on here, the shape that will become a form. Okay, so I already have one cut out, so I'll switch over to that. So I've got this, and if I wanted to then turn this into a cube, you do not have to cut apart each little piece. What you can do is once again use that par cutting method and cut on each of these lines part of the way. And then you will be able to fold the sides together. And then if you're wondering how do I then attach this, one way that can look pretty neat, I already have some on here, I'll just pull that off, is to use this paper tape that we have here. So to use the paper tape, what you do, it's kind of like a stamp, you have to wet the back of it. I'm going to cut a little piece of it. A scissors or a knife, either one will work fine. Now if you want, you can actually take this tape and you can make the tape the exact width of the cardboard so that it really covers the cardboard completely. I didn't do that right now, but that's okay. So what I'm going to do with this tape is I'm going to start by folding it in half, just creating a seam in it. Okay. And then you're going to need a cup of water and a brush. So I'll take that, and I'm going to wet just one half of it. And I'm going to attach this to one side of the box so that the corner lines up with the corner of the box. Okay, press that, and then I want to attach this other side, so I'm going to wet that. And I find if you try to wet it all at the beginning, it often gets a little bit messy. I find it's easier to wet one side with the crease and then do the other. Okay, I can press this in, and then that side is attached. Can do the same. I could then do another piece of tape that attached here to here, and you could do the whole box like that. Okay. All right. I'm going to show you just one more thing, and that is when you're creating your own forms, like let's say this does not suffice, it's too small and you want to make a larger one, you'll want to make sure whatever it is you draw has right angles, assuming that is the goal, to have right angles. So for starters, this mat is super useful because it has grid lines on it. And if you line your paper up or your cardboard up with the grid lines, it's going to help you to keep right angles. So I'll show you a bit of what I'm talking about. Okay, so already I've got one factory edge here that I'm working with. So I notice I'm lining up. I notice I have a right angle here. Okay, so I'm going to line up one edge with any of the grid lines, any of the vertical grid lines, and then I'm going to line the bottom edge with horizontal grid lines. So then if I wanted to make this into say a perfect square, what I could do is I could measure the length of this side, which is 7 inches, and then I could measure here 7 inches. And then I can just utilize these grid lines. So I'm lining up the ruler with the grid line at the top and the bottom, and that is going to ensure that this side that I'm cutting is perpendicular to this side. Okay, so then I'll use the ruler, and I'm going to cut up right against the ruler. And this side was not, this side will also have to check this side. So these three are now, this is a right angle, and this is a right angle. This one I don't know, that was not a factory edge, so we can adjust that one too. So to adjust that, can either use the grid lines, or the other trick for finding right angles is using this, which I told you is called a square. So what I would do for that is if I line one edge of the square up with a straight edge of the cardboard, then I can take my pen and trace that edge, because I know this is always going to be perpendicular to this. Okay, so I can then trim that. And make my cut. All right, so there we go. This should be a pretty good square. Okay, so yeah, very important. It's tempting to eyeball things, but depending on your project, if you really need to have right angles, do take advantage of using the grid lines and using the square to create a right angle where you need to. Okay, so that's all for now.